All right, so get this. A Mickey Mantle rookie card, like
Yeah.
the 1952 Topps one, you know the one I'm talking about? They can go for millions.
Millions.
Millions. It's crazy,
It
right?
really is, yeah.
So that's what makes his legacy so valuable even all these years later, and that's what we're going to unpack in this deep dive, going way past just the basic Mantle facts. We've got excerpts from Mickey Mantle, the icon who defined an era of baseball, and let me tell you, this is going to be good.
It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? That kind of price tag. I mean, that speaks to like a cultural impact that goes way beyond just baseball stats, you know?
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So we all know Mantle, the New York Yankee, the home run king, but his story starts way before that. It starts in Spavinaw, Oklahoma. Spavinaw, Oklahoma. The city of four C's, as they call it.
Four C's.
Four C's.
Okay, so corn, cattle, coal.
And cement.
Cement.
Cement, not exactly glamorous.
Right.
But, hey, solid foundation.
Yeah, true.
Right. Even as a kid, Mantle was the standout athlete, like multiple sports, the whole deal. But baseball, that was his thing. He just flew through the minor leagues, 19 years old, and the Yankees already had their eye on him.
Wow, 19 years old.
Yeah.
That's got to be intimidating, right? Coming up in the shadow of guys like Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio. Talk about pressure.
No kidding. By 51, he's in the majors. 52, he's starting to make his mark. And here's where it gets interesting. Everyone talks about Mantle's power, but he could also hit from both sides of the plate, switch hitting. How much of an advantage was that back then?
Oh, huge. Think about it from the pitcher's point of view. You've got your go-to pitches based on whether a guy's a righty or a lefty.
Right.
Mantle throws that all out the window.
Mm.
You can't just exploit a weakness on one side. You're constantly having to adjust.
So you're facing a guy who could hit a homer off you whether you throw a curveball or a slider inside or outside.
Yeah.
No wonder pitchers had nightmares about him.
Exactly. And then when you look at Mantle's stats,
Yeah.
like that .298 lifetime batting average, the 536 home runs,
Yeah,
that's impressive on its own.
for sure.
But his OPS, that's what really stands out to me.
Yeah. Okay, so for those of us who aren't walking baseball encyclopedias, break down OPS for us.
Yeah, sure. So it stands for on base plus slugging. It basically measures how good a hitter is at getting on base.
Yeah.
A&D, hitting for power mantles, was .977.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, that's higher than Ted Williams.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
one of the greatest hitters of all time.
Yeah.
It just shows how consistently dangerous Mantle was every single time he stepped up to bat.
So we're talking about a guy who's not just hitting homers. He's getting on base, setting up runs, being a constant threat. No wonder he's considered a five-tool player.
And that's another area where Mantle really shines. He wasn't just a power hitter. He could hit for average. He had incredible speed, a strong arm, a great fielding ability. He was the complete package, the kind of player that could win you games in so many different ways.
All right, so let's dive into those five tools. Give us some specific examples of how Mantle used each one to dominate the game.
Well, his speed was legendary. Stealing bases, taking extra bases on hits. He could turn singles into doubles, doubles into triples. It put immense pressure on the defense, forcing them to play differently. Then you've got his arm. There was this one play, he was in deep center field, and he threw a guy out at home plate just like that.
Just casually gunning down runners from the outfield like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, yeah.
But what about his fielding? Wasn't he known for some pretty spectacular catches, too?
Oh, yeah. He covered a ton of ground in center field, made some incredible diving catches. But it's his hitting that really set him apart. And the switch hitting that added a whole other dimension to his game. It forced pitchers to approach him differently, to constantly adjust their strategy. He was a nightmare to face, even for the best pitchers in the league.
It's almost unfair, right? This guy can hit for power and average from both sides of the plate. How do you even pitch to that?
You don't. You just hope for the best. But seriously, Mantle's ability to switch hit was a major factor in his success. It made him incredibly versatile and unpredictable.
So we've got the speed, the arm, the fielding, and the hitting. But what about the power? 536 home runs. That's not a typo. He was the home run king for a reason, right?
Absolutely. Mantle had raw power, but he also had this amazing ability to hit for contact and drive the ball.
Oh.
And when he connected, it was a thing of beauty. Towering home runs, tape measure shots, he could hit them out of any ballpark.
Speaking of home runs, you can't talk about Mantle without mentioning the World Series. 7 championships with the Yankees, a record-breaking 18 World Series homers. He was the ultimate clutch performer.
He really was. The bigger the moment, the better he played. And there's this one home run, Game 5 of the 1956 World Series against the Brooklyn Dodgers. Mantle hits this towering shot off Sal Maglie, lands in the upper deck of Yankee Stadium. They say it's one of the longest home runs ever hit there.
It's almost like he was born for those moments. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses, right? Mantle battled some serious injuries throughout his career.
Yeah, his knees especially. Multiple surgeries, chronic pain. It's incredible to think that he achieved all this while playing through that kind of pain. It makes you wonder what he could have done if he had been healthy.
It's the ultimate what if, right? But even with the injuries, he was a force to be reckoned with. But let's go beyond the stats for a moment. Mantle was more than just a baseball player. He became a cultural icon. What was it about him that captivated the public's imagination?
Well, he had this charisma, this all-American boy charm. But there was also a vulnerability about him, a sense that he was struggling with the pressures of fame.
And he was pretty open about his struggles with alcohol later in life, wasn't he?
He was, and that honesty at a time when athletes were expected to be perfect role models really resonated with people. It made him more human, more relatable.
So we've got this incredibly talented, charismatic guy, but he's also flawed, struggling with personal demons. It's almost a classic tragic hero narrative, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And that complexity, I think, is a big part of why his story continues to fascinate people.
All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground here, but there's still so much more to explore. When we come back, we'll delve deeper into Mantle's legacy and how his story continues to resonate with fans today. Stay with us. So we're back digging deeper into the Mickey Mantle story. And, it's fascinating how his impact went way beyond baseball. Like we were just talking about magazine covers, movies. He even had a song written about him.
Yeah, it really speaks to the power of his image. He wasn't just a great player. He represented something about America, about striving for success, even with flaws.
And that's what's so interesting about Mantle. He didn't shy away from his flaws, his struggles with alcohol. He talked about them openly, especially later in life.
And that was huge.
Yeah.
Back then, athletes were supposed to be these perfect heroes. Mantle's honesty, it made him more human, more vulnerable. It resonated with people who were dealing with their own challenges.
He wasn't hiding behind a facade. It was like, here I am, warts and all, and I still achieved these incredible things.
Exactly. It changed the conversation around athletes and substance abuse.
Yeah.
It was no longer something to be swept under the rug.
Hmm.
Mantle's openness helped pave the way for a more compassionate and understanding approach to these issues.
And it all ties back to that rookie card price tag. Right.
Yeah.
It's not just about his stats. It's about what he represented, the whole package.
You got it. Mantle embodied a certain era, a time when baseball was America's pastime, and he was the golden boy.
But he wasn't just handed this golden boy image, right? He came from humble beginnings, small-town Oklahoma, and worked his way to the top.
Absolutely. It's a classic American dream story. A kid from a small town with raw talent and a work ethic that took him all the way to Yankee Stadium. But it's also a cautionary tale, a reminder that fame and fortune don't always equal happiness.
It adds another layer to his legacy, right? He's not just this untouchable hero. He's a human being who made mistakes, struggled with demons, and ultimately tried to make amends for his past.
That's what makes his story so compelling, so relatable. It reminds us that even the greatest among us are flawed, and that's okay.
Okay, so we've talked about Mantle's cultural impact, his personal struggles, but let's go back to the baseball diamond for a moment. We've established he was a five-tool player, but how did he actually revolutionize the game?
Well, his style of play was ahead of its time. He combined power speed and a strategic approach to hitting that was truly innovative. His switch hitting, for example, wasn't just a gimmick. It was a weapon that gave him an edge over pitchers.
It's almost like he was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers.
That's a great way to put it. He was always thinking, analyzing, looking for ways to exploit the defense's weaknesses.
So he wasn't just reacting to the game, he was dictating it, forcing the other team to adjust to him.
Exactly. And that's what made him so difficult to defend against. He was a constant threat, whether he was at the plate, on the base paths, or in the field.
Speaking of defense, his fielding was pretty impressive too, right? Wasn't he known for making some spectacular catches in center field?
Oh yeah, he had incredible range and a strong arm. He could track down balls hit to the deepest parts of the outfield, and he could throw runners out at home plate with pinpoint accuracy.
So he wasn't just an offensive powerhouse, he was a defensive asset as well.
Absolutely. And that's what made him such a valuable player. He contributed in every aspect of the game. He was the total package.
So it wasn't just the stats, the home runs, the championships. It was his all-around game, his ability to impact the game in so many ways.
Exactly. And that's why he's still considered one of the greatest to ever play the game.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. His stats, his impact on the game, his cultural significance, his personal struggles, and almost overwhelming the sheer scope of his legacy.
It is hard to encapsulate everything he represented, but I think it comes down to this. Mickey Mantle was more than just a baseball player. He was a symbol of hope, of triumph over adversity, of the human spirit's capacity for both greatness and vulnerability.
Beautifully put. And that's why even decades after his retirement, his story continues to resonate with fans. But as we move toward the end of this deep dive, I have to ask, what about Mantle's legacy in terms of tangible objects? Specifically, his memorabilia. We talked about that rookie card going for millions, but why? What makes his stuff so valuable?
Well, a few things. It's partly the nostalgia factor. Mantle represents a golden age of baseball, a time when the game was at its purest, most romanticized form. His memorabilia is a tangible connection to that era.
It's like owning a piece of history, a piece of Americana.
Exactly. But it's also about scarcity. Many of those rookie cards were discarded over the years, so the ones that survived, especially in good condition, are incredibly rare.
So it's the classic supply and demand dynamic. The rarer the item, the higher the price.
Exactly. And in Mantle's case, the demand is constantly fueled by his enduring popularity and the emotional connection fans have to him.
It's more than just owning a piece of cardboard. It's owning a piece of the Mantle legend.
You got it. And that's why his memorabilia commands such high prices. It's a tangible link to a beloved figure, a reminder of his greatness and his impact on the game.
Okay, we're going to take a quick pause here, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Mick's legacy and explore what makes his story so enduring even in today's world. Okay, so we're back. And, it's really amazing how Mantle's story continues to resonate even with fans who never saw him play. Like, what is it about him that transcends generations?
I think it's that mix, of extraordinary talent and very human flaws.
Yeah.
He achieved these incredible things on the field, but he also struggled off the field, made mistakes, and was really open about it.
It's like he gave people permission to be both ambitious and imperfect. You can strive for greatness, but you don't have to pretend to be perfect.
Exactly. He wasn't put on a pedestal as this untouchable hero. He was relatable even in his imperfections.
Which leads us to the big question, Mantle today. Could he still be the Mick in the era of analytics, social media, and 24/7 news?
Now that's a debate for the ages. I mean, his raw talent, the power, the switch hitting those would still be huge assets.
Oh, for sure.
But the game itself has changed. It's
Right.
more strategic, more data-driven.
And the pressure on athletes today is intense. Like the media scrutiny, the fan expectations, it's nonstop. Could Mantle handle that?
It's hard to say. He was private in some ways, yet he thrived in the spotlight. But the modern media landscape is a whole different beast.
Right.
The social media commentary, the instant analysis, it can be overwhelming.
Imagine Mantle facing a barrage of tweets after every game, every at-bat. Would he have embraced it, or would it have been a distraction?
Who knows? Maybe he would have been a social media superstar, using it to connect with fans in a way that wasn't possible back then. Or maybe it would have been too much pressure, too much noise.
Yeah, it's fun to speculate, right? But the bottom line is Mantle's legacy goes beyond any specific era. He represents something enduring about the human spirit. The drive to excel, the struggle with adversity, and the courage to be yourself, flaws and all.
You nailed it. That's why his rookie cards are worth millions. Why his name still sparks debate. Why his story continues to fascinate. He wasn't just a ball player. He was a cultural icon who transcended the sport itself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from Mantle's story?
I think it's this. Greatness doesn't always come in a neat, perfect package. It could be messy, complicated, full of contradictions. And that's what makes it human and ultimately more meaningful.
Beautifully said, Mickey Mantle. A flawed hero, a symbol of his time, and a legend whose story continues to inspire. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of the Mick.